Ready? Okay. It being 6 o'clock or thereabouts, I hereby call to order this meeting of the Kenmore Planning Commission. Before we get started, I'm going to note for the record that we are not sitting at the commissioner dais tonight. We have 2 commissioners in attendance by telephone. They're on speakerphone. Do we have 3? We have 3 commissioners in attendance by telephone. And therefore, we are sitting at the presentation table instead, and we will hold the meeting from this position so that they can hear us better and we can speak into the microphones. So the first item on the agenda is citizen comment. If there are any citizens wishing to render comment, please step forward to the podium. From viewing the council chambers, there appear to be no citizens here to render comment, so we've satisfied that element of the agenda. The next item on the agenda is discussion of presentation to City Council on tree wind throw amendments. And I will defer to staff, and because I am not in the majority, I will defer and let the minority members lead the discussion on this subject. I'm sorry, did I say minority? I meant majority members lead the discussion on this subject.
So this is Lori Anderson, one of the staff members. We have Angela Kugler, Deborah Srebnick, and Mark Orenshall on the line. So there are 6 planning commissioners in attendance. And the purpose of tonight's conversation is just to decide who and how the commissioners wish to present to the City Council at the joint meeting on Monday night. Typically, staff would give sort of a factual overview, and then individual commissioners would speak to their recommendation. And Commissioner Vanderland, who is not available tonight, did send in some draft talking points that I distributed to all of the commissioners for their review. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to the commission to talk about.
Did my comments come through? No?
Yes, they did.
I saw them.
Okay, yeah, Okay, so Angela, did you want to take the lead on this portion, or how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, I kind of want to, first I'd like to clarify how things are going to be presented. So will we start with staff presenting the staff recommendations as we had voted?
That would be typical, yeah, and we are planning to do that if that's okay.
Okay, great. So then I think it probably makes sense for Mike maybe to kind of cover all of the points that we talked about, kind of reviewing all of the different facts about how we went through the review of the issues, some of the concerns that we had, and then we'll probably turn to the minority to do their minority report. And then I was hoping that following that, we might be able to, clear up if there are any other questions that come up based on that conversation. Maybe share some more details about specific concerns that we talked about.
Angela and Deborah and Mark, this is Debbie. Mike's made some comments. Is there anything that the other members of the Is there any other members in the majority that would like to kind of build on Mike's comments or speak to any particular issue on the majority recommendation?
Well, I'm not clear. So people have seen my comments, or I have.
Why don't you recap your comments, Deborah, in case folks haven't seen them?
If everybody's looking at Mike, I guess I was a little uncomfortable with the majority, so to speak, trying to articulate what the minority perspective was, which was this 0.9 and 10. I didn't think that was appropriate for our role. Instead, just reflecting that with, a few key points that resonated with our view, in support of, why we were in support of the staff recommendation, and I outlined those in the email. I'm using my phone at the moment, so I can't actually look at them. But, with the basic, that the policy would address the disparity between the developers and the single-family occupancy and balance the needs of property rights for public safety, and, just sort of the basics of why we were in support of the staff position, or at least from my perspective. So, but I was mostly uncomfortable with just, the presumption that we would speak for the minority opinion.
Okay, so Deborah, one approach would be to say, building on what Angela said, that Mike can kind of give the overview that he outlined, with the exception of the minority perspective, which I'm assuming that the minority wants to give their own perspective.
Exactly.
Right. And then if you want to call out the points from your email, that would certainly be an option.
Okay, I wasn't clear. I thought there was like one person that kind of spoke for the majority and one person that spoke for the minority opinion, but it's sort of more of a free-for-all.
Historically, I think the commission has been really good about letting whichever commissioners wanted to speak. I think Chair Nugent would agree that whichever commissioners wanted to speak to a particular topic or point of view would be given that opportunity. It hasn't just been one person doing the presentation.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm happy to speak to the few points that I just kind of blew off the top there. I don't even remember what they were, but yeah, I mean, they were just, I don't know, off the top of my head. So.
I have them. Basically, number one was that, this is the majority and staff recommendations. That one was to address the disparity between regulations for developers and those for single-family properties. Two, that we wanted to help prevent wind throw risk and its potential property damage and safety issues. Number three was that we were considering how to limit the burden on homeowners to provide additional information and have additional burden in the process by incorporating it into existing forms. And four is to respect the balance between property rights and community safety. And five, that this does not preclude also investigating whether there is a way to strengthen our hazard tree regulations.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what those. I do think that Mike's talking points, I was assuming is kind of like more of a rough draft versus what you would read, say verbatim. I think that if we are maybe asking him to do that, I could reach back out to him and maybe make it a little more concise. And then, incorporate, we could just assume Debbie will cover her talking points and that the minority will cover their points. Yeah. I like my talking points. I thought they were good.
So, Carol, did you have anything that you wanted to?
I don't at this time.
All right. And
Carol, is there anything that you feel strongly about when it comes to the conversation of windrow that you would like to share with the city council? Because I think they generally appreciate knowing kind of the thought that went into it.
I think if there was a contribution that I could make, so we can say this. The contribution that I would like to make is that we would, along with these recommended amendments, we would recommend that the City Council take into consideration that in the process of working on this element, there were other urban forestry issues that arose that were not attached with windthrow, that we would perhaps like the council to consider addressing while they work on this element. That would be my contribution. And then, if they ask me, well, what are those things? I would probably ask them to think about protecting private property rights, the private property owner's right to have a due process in using their land the way they would like to within the, accepted standards of urban forestry. Those laws are already on the books in King County. It's not like our city can, be different. We can if we want to. But to participate in the regional government, we really need to have these kinds of hazard laws, which isn't totally what the wind throw issue is about. But having this wind throw issue in our city ordinances actually helps to protect the future. And that's how I would present that to the city council. Does that sound acceptable?
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think they do like to hear from all the planning commissioners, so I think that would be great. And I'm thinking it might, I like the fact that Mike is kind of covering the points more in like a matter-of-fact way. But it is a lot that he's covering, and I almost feel like maybe we could just divide, kind of cover, maybe split that.
Why don't Angela? Are you interested in splitting that? Because if you have had a chance to look at Mike's, and you can say, well, I would like to take a look at this, then we can let Mike know that that's what was discussed this evening, and then for him to focus on the remainder. That might be one way to address it.
Yeah, I think I haven't had a chance to kind of revise it in a way that I'd like to, but I think that a natural division might just be at like point, 8, where it's like, we, despite extensive debate, the commission was unable to come to a consensus. The split in decision is this, and then that would be a kind of a good place to fit in Debbie's talking points, and then maybe share some perspective on why we came to those solutions.
So do you want to talk to Mike about dividing the talking points, or do you want... Okay.
Can I do that just through email with him?
I think so, yes. Just the two of you, not beyond that. But the two of you certainly could discuss that. So I will let him know. I think he is planning to call tomorrow to see how the meeting went tonight. And I can let him know that he should get in touch with you, and that the two of you will work through those talking points. And then Deborah will include her points, and Carol will include her points. And then... Does that satisfy for the majority recommendation? Then we can turn to the minority recommendation?
Yeah, are these, and since I haven't done this with you guys before, I don't think, do we submit these in writing, or how does it, or it's just talk through?
No, it's just talking through.
Okay, great.
So Doug and Mike and Mark, did you want to talk about your portion of the presentation, or?
Well, we plan to. I mean, we've already obviously written the minority report. You guys know what our position is here. So we're going to sit down because we're not a quorum. We can just talk amongst ourselves and kind of iron out those details without taking up everybody else's time. I did want to say, there was some talk about, in Mike's list here of what he wanted to say, there are a couple things we're going to disagree with, to the extent he describes what the commission split was, for example, or that the commission agreed, all members agreed on changes to the original recommendations. I don't think that's accurate. I don't want to surprise him. I don't want to surprise anybody. I'm not trying to come at this from a hostile position. I'm just trying to give our side of it. And so I just disagree with that, and I'll probably point that out in a polite way. But so if he wants to say that, of course he can. I'm not here to tell him. But I think we disagree on what was that split and whether there was unanimous agreement on this at some point, which I don't think there was.
I couldn't quite hear what it is that you were talking about, which point were you were talking talking about?
Item 7, Angela, says staff revise. I'm sorry?
Did you say number 7?
I did.
Okay.
This isn't really helping them here, is it?
It does help them if you speak into it, though, because it broadcasts in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So item 7 on Mike's memo says staff revised their original recommendations to incorporate changes agreed to by all commission members. And I disagree with that. I don't think all commission members agreed to anything on this. So I would point that out at the minority, when the minority got a turn to speak in front of the council. I don't want to embarrass Mike or make it awkward, and that's why I'm bringing it up now. If he wants to change that, I'm giving him a chance to try and correct it so that it doesn't look like it's any more divisive than it already is.
Okay.
It might be helpful if he was more specific about what those changes were,
Rather than talking about how they were approved.
because there were some places where we mutually agreed on what direction we were going, but if he's specific about it, that would be clearer.
Well, I think the one thing we agreed on was, and Mike mentioned this, he mentions it at the end of his memo.
He does.
So I think that's accurate.
His intention is there.
Yeah, I'm sure it was in good faith. I just
Yeah.
didn't want to come out of left field at the council hearing, so I'm bringing it up now.
Right. Okay. Mike Mulcair, anything that you?
No, I think Doug and Mark and I will have an opportunity to go through the minority report and decide who will speak to which.
Okay.
I think we'll take it in thirds or something resembling thirds and
Right.
be prepared with our own areas. Yeah.
And Mark Orenshaw, you're on the phone. You've been very quiet, though.
Right, I'm having a little trouble hearing all this, but I guess I would basically second what Mike said, and let's, we can talk amongst the three of us. There are a couple things I would probably want to raise in the oral part of that, and I confess I've not had a chance to read Mike Vanderline's or Deborah's talking points yet, so I will go through those as well certainly before the meeting on Monday. But the general structure looks good with the way you laid out the presentation. So.
I had one comment that came up, which was that I hope this is a good time to talk about, which is I'm not sure the minority report was concerned about Withrow on new development. If you are, that's fine, but I think we should probably clarify that point for Monday night. So if your minority report is addressed to all tree Withrow, you should clarify that. If it's only to the single-family portion of the tree Withrow, maybe you want to
I
speak
agree.
to that.
We'll talk it over.
Okay.
That's good.
Anything else?
No.
Mark, are you good with everything? Mark Orenshaw?
Yes, I'm fine with the direction, and I barely heard what Lori said, but I think you covered that already. So,
All right.
Lori, could you just for my clarification? Could you just go over? I just had a hard time hearing. I'm in a car, so.
Right. Go over sort of the layout of the...
Your last point. I didn't really hear your
Oh,
last point.
my last point was that it wasn't completely clear whether or not the minority report was stating that the three of you were not only in opposition to the single-family changes, but also in opposition to the changes for new development. Remember, there were two different code sections that we were talking about. One was for new developments like short plat subdivisions, new commercial buildings, and the other part had to do with single-family tree cutting. And so I thought it would be helpful for the City Council to know whether or not the minority report was speaking to all tree Withrow issues or, in fact, was supportive of the development ones but not the single-family ones.
Yeah, I don't believe we made that distinction. Is that correct?
Right.
I don't have the report.
Yeah, the distinction has not been made, and it may be that was purposeful and that the opposition is to all tree Withrow regulation, but I don't know whether that's the case.
Okay, we will. Can we clarify that when we get together and certainly?
Exactly. We already talked a little bit about it, but we didn't have all the information, so we'll do that before Monday's meeting and make it clear at the time.
I think that'll be helpful for the council.
I agree.
So,
That's what I was going to ask, so.
Did you, is the majority opinion inherently both the new development as well as?
correct.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it would give, it gives the council options then, if they know that there is consensus on some of the recommendation going forward, and it's kind of only a portion of it where there is sort of a dissension.
Well, there was I think it was a council-wide directive on the development restrictions in July, but a lot has been said and new things have come up since then, so
That's correct.
that's why we want to reconsider that prior to the oral presentation. So if I could, I think Angela spelled this out, but I want to make sure I understand it correctly. So the order of presentation on Monday night, of course, the mayor will be the chair of the meeting. Nobody on the commission will quote-unquote chair. I intend to let the majority decide who wants to talk when. I expect staff to start by laying out pretty much what it's written out in the materials it gave to the council. And then the majority would give its oral presentation, and they would divide it up as they see fit. And then I think either staff or I would step up and say, the minority would like to also present based on the report that we've also submitted with the materials, and then we'll give our respective comments regarding our report. And then I suspect then it's up to council to ask questions.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's correct. The one other thing that I might note is that the council packet that they received did not include the, remember the matrix, the tree assessment matrix? And I had a council person request that. So that information will be, that's the only new piece of information that will be available Monday night, is that they want to look at that matrix, at least one of them. So, and I'll just include that in my very opening remarks.
Okay.
And actually, the PowerPoint for the staff comments will be uploaded probably late Friday afternoon, and it's very brief. So I'm telling you that so that all the Planning Commission members can kind of get a preview of what those comments will be before Monday evening.
That's good.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a feeling, no information, just a feeling, that there will probably be some significant citizen comment before, if it's an open meeting, the joint meeting.
Yeah, there could be. I don't know. I will say that one of the persons who spoke at the Planning Commission had asked me about the council meeting, but that was just one person. So I don't know.
All right. I guess I'm still chair. Is there anything else among those on the phone?
No, I was curious, do we have a meeting on the 3rd, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We just had a meeting bumped from late afternoon to 6 o'clock, so I was just trying to figure out how to do that, but we'll figure it out.
But our joint meeting is Monday.
All right.
I don't have anything else.
Okay.
Me neither.
I think that if you look at the agenda for the council, I think you'll see that the joint meeting is is the first thing on the agenda after citizen comments. So that's nice to get to that before the rest of the council business. So I'm letting you know that so that the joint meeting should start fairly quickly unless there's a whole bunch of citizen comment.
And do you expect we would sit here?
I think it would be set up as we've had done in at least one other meeting where the council kind of around a table.
It'll be a circular formation?
As circular as you can get with oblong
Well,
tables.
just an enclosed formation instead of us in front of them.
Yes.
And I think it probably makes more sense for me to sit with the minority. So it's probably a little easier for the council to see where, who's on which side of this issue. Does that make sense?
We can certainly set up the place tags to reflect that if
Yeah.
that's what you wish to do.
Well, and it may be that members of the majority want to talk between comments and to each other, and the same for the minority. It might be a little more efficient that way.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
All right. All right, any new business? I have to say that before I can declare adjournment. All right, there being no new business, we are adjourned for the night. Thanks, everyone.